It's the SKOR North Twins Show.
Okay, now that we've had a day to sleep on things, a night to sleep on things, we reacted immediately. Declan went live on the SKOR North Twins Show YouTube channel. You can check Judd and I just sweating in the parking lot at Park Tavern during our trade deadline gathering yesterday. But now that we've heard from Derek Falvey and he has spoken to some reporters, we'll get into sort of the day after discussions here. But gentlemen, all week long, it's our Power of Sports auction over at scorenorth.com/auction, where we're raising money to benefit the Courage Kenny Rehabilitation Institute. So all week long, we have several great experiences and fun things to buy or bid on. scorenorth.com/auction. Our goal is to raise $15,000 this week. And hey, for Twins fans, I know you're not thrilled about what happened yesterday, but there's still 2 months of glorious weather. The Twins are in playoff position. And one of the things that you can get right now, as long as these tickets are available, it's a buy it now. We are throwing a SKOR North Twins Show party on the executive balcony Wednesday, September 11th for the Twins-Angels game, 6:10 first pitch. So you can buy individual tickets. You can buy bulk tickets for a group, friends, whatever, and have them pay you back. scorenorth.com/auction. And you can come hang out with us. There'll be snacks. There'll be drinks. And it's just a great place. Skyline view. Great view of the ballpark and everything. There's also a Champions Club experience and all sorts of other things. Yeah, scorenorth.com/auction.
Champions Club, man. That is a good time. It's been a long time. In fact, Phil, I think I took you to a game because Dawn and I won or bought a Champions Club experience. I don't know. It's got to be about 8-9 years back. Let's just say that once you go on the Champions Club, it's hard to see Target Field the same way again.
It's like flying private. Or,
it really is.
It just happened like
do you want
once
some more
in
free
my
beer?
life.
Do you want some more free food?
Do you want some more prime rib? Just open your head and we'll just throw some
hot dog. Yeah, prime rib. It is great.
So yeah, and just real quick on Courage Kenny, if you're not familiar, Courage Kenny works with children and adults who experience life-altering injuries and disabilities. They offer innovative rehab therapy, physical, occupational, speech therapy to get people back on track. If someone was paralyzed, if someone was in some other life-altering situation, that's where Courage Kenny comes in to help people. So scorenorth.com/auction to help us out. All the money goes to a great cause. So let's do this, actually. I mean, I've got some quotes from Derek Falvey, and I'm happy to read those. But now that let's just start here. You guys have had a night to sleep on the Twins' very quiet trade deadline. What are your thoughts now after thinking about it the last 12 or 15 hours or so?
I mean, I think Trevor Richards is a solid reliever. Could the Twins have maybe done more? Potentially. And you look at the state of other teams buying more, what the Royals were able to do. I mean, the Royals, man, in like January, when the Royals started making some free agent signings, we said, hey, I don't think Kansas City's going to be maybe competing for playoff spots, but they're trying. They're gonna make some additions here in free agency, and now here they are. They are in a position to potentially be a playoff team, and they added more at the deadline.
Twins,
yeah. I mean, they've exceeded expectations. Cleveland getting Alex Cobb, who hasn't thrown a pitch all year, is a very classic Cleveland Guardians trade deadline move. They've never really been big time buyers. So I'm curious how that works for them. They got a nice bat that lengthens their lineup too. But it's a little disappointing because even though the options were probably limited and maybe out of what the Twins were able to give up to get someone like Jack Flaherty, or if the Yankees had figured out this Nestor Cortez thing, it would have been intriguing. But this is a good Twins team that still needs, I think, another really good starting pitcher to be taken seriously. And from everything that came out with the national reports from the Passons and the Bob Nightingales of the world saying the Twins' financial problems are limiting them at the deadline. And was that coming from Falvey and Levine? Was that coming from other GMs who have, been talking with the Twins about potential proposals? It is a little disappointing again, it stems kind of all the way back to last November when they first started announcing that they were going to slash payroll.
Phil, can you read those quotes? Because I think the context of what you're going to say is very important to understand sort of where this stands this morning.
Sure. And I'll start by reminding people that we had 3 credible national reporters. Mark Feinsand, MLB, I think he used to cover the Yankees for the New York Times, I want to say. Or no, that was Tyler Kepner. But Feinsand was covered the Yankees for one of the New York publications, then MLB.com.
Right.
And then Bob Nightingale, USA Today, and Jeff Passan, ESPN, all reported in the last week that finances are altering the Twins' ability to do much at the trade deadline.
Right.
So Derek Falvey was asked about that, and he essentially said it had very little, their inactivity, to do with finances. He said, yeah, I want to make that clear. I've said this at different junctures along the way. What Joe and the Pohlad family historically have always, and then he kind of goes off on a side tangent, if I felt like it was a really good opportunity for us to make a significant impact and the financial side of it was part of the equation, the conversations, I've had very productive and positive conversations about that with ownership when those things intersected. That was not something that came to pass over the past 24 to 48 hours here with something that was presented to us that was limited financially. He's saying that wasn't, it was prospect capital that was more the issue here. We were definitely targeting certain types of players that we thought could really impact us, and those deals didn't come together. It wasn't about those financial conversations. I will add, The Athletic is reporting that the Twins were in on both Kikuchi and Flaherty, but the Twins felt like that the prospect prices and the asks were too high. So team sources said the Twins were in serious discussions with the Blue Jays about Kikuchi when Houston blew the Twins offer out of the water late on Monday. And then another issue facing the Twins, team sources said, was the lofty asking price of in-division foes. The Twins engaged the Tigers for Jack Flaherty and the White Sox on Fetty, but both rival clubs centered their demands on packages that began with Brooks Lee, Walker Jenkins, and Emmanuel Rodriguez, who are basically the Twins' 3 top prospects. Sure. A price point the Twins considered to be a non-starter. Now, Kikuchi from the Blue Jays, the price tag on him was 3 players, including 2 of the Astros' top 15 prospects. The Flaherty price, and he's a rental, was 2 players. It was the Dodgers' number 8 and 22 prospects. So, I mean, we can sit here like whether it was finances or whether it was prospect capital.
Right.
I guess the main headline here is several other teams made their teams better and were aggressive yesterday.
Correct.
The Twins were not aggressive. I do think they got a little bit better by adding a relief pitcher who's good against left-handed hitters and who can miss some bats. But like Trevor Richards isn't. He's not going. You're not going from like 6% chance to win the World Series to 15% chance because you made that move yesterday. It did not move the needle.
And so to go back to the financial aspect of this discussion, and were they being cheap or hoarding prospects? In the financial angle of things, okay? To your point, 3 prominent national writers, I would guess all independently, found out, talked to people who said the Twins do not have the capital financially to get guys, including a rental player, which, by the way, as we've talked about, would be a prorated portion of the salary. The whole thing there was, well, they'd have to send a player back to match salaries, which, as I keep saying, is a salary cap league problem. Baseball has no cap. In Falvey's defense, he can't come out and say, yeah, you know what? I had a Kikuchi deal down pat, and you'll never guess what, but Joe Pohl had walked in and said, ixnay on the Kikuchi trade. So, like, he's not going to tell you that. Do I believe him totally? No. He's in a pickle. Like, he has to defend his bosses. But do I believe that when your shortstop, your essentially team captain, Carlos Correa, brings you a list and is like, let's go, let's get one of these guys, and you end up with a reliever who might be your 4th or 5th guy in the pen from Toronto, am I going to buy that this was all about prospects? No, I'm not. Now, the Kikuchi price, I will say this, was too high. I would not have. He's got a 6 ERA over like the last 2 months. The Astros gave up too much. The Flaherty price is very much in line with what I expected. The Dodgers gave up a couple of nice prospects, but nothing that's going to set you back. And here's where I'm not buying that there was a Tigers in division tax. Flaherty's contract's up. So if you could have gotten a couple of nice prospects from the Twins, it's the Twins who would have to be concerned, if you care at all, about those guys coming back to beat you. Now, if you're getting term, like if Jack Flaherty has 3 years left, and okay, then Tigers, knock yourselves out. You're probably concerned about that. I'm sorry. I'm not buying what Falvey is selling. I think that this did come down to, and look, I mean, we have a $30 million cut in payroll going into the season to prove this. So, like, this is not like, wow, they were spending before. I'm not buying this. I think this is finances.
I think it can be a little bit of both. Like, if the asking price for a guy like Eric Fetty or Jack Flaherty was a Walker Jenkins and Brooks Lee, regardless of finances, like that's absurd and ridiculous. But this stems all the way back from November. They announced they were going to cut the payroll. It then stems into free agency when Josh Staumont for $1 million, Carlos Santana, who has exceeded expectations and has been really good, was brought in on 1 year for $5 million. They had to work around a bunch of who's taking this salary and money when they got Manuel Margot and DeSclafani and Justin Topo, and they sold off Jorge Polanco. So there has been ridiculous amount of hoop jumping just to add players throughout this entire offseason. So I do lean with Judd that yes, finances 100% played a role in their deadline plans yesterday. But at the same time, if Walker Jenkins and Brooks Lee were asking prices from in-division teams, like that is absurd. And regardless of your cash flow coming in, coming out, that is a non-starter.
I do think Detective Judd is onto something with this Tigers thing. If we're sniffing around wondering what's the truth in all of this stew of why the Twins elected going back to the offseason, like just why have they decided to not hit the gas pedal to double down on one of the best seasons in recent franchise history? If you're in a discussion with the Tigers and you say, hey, we want the last 2 months of, by the way, he was a rental for them too, right? Like he's like, it's not like he's been with the Tigers for 10 years either, you know? So you say, hey, we'd love to pick up the last 2 months of Jack Flaherty, and then he's a free agent, and quite frankly, we don't even know what our TV situation is next year. Like the chances of Jack Flaherty being a Twin after this season, he's going to sign for like $18 million a year somewhere, right?
Right. Correct.
I agree with Judd. It's the Twins that would be, wait a second, do we really want to give up, like, certainly not Walker Jenkins or Brooks Lee or Emmanuel Rodriguez, but even if it's like Keishel or somebody in division, the Twins would be the team more worried about that player biting them in the division down the road. So I definitely call that bluff for sure. But here's another thing, okay? Let's zoom out beyond this particular trade deadline. Derek Falvey was hired in October of 2016, taking over for Terry Ryan. So his first full season as the chief baseball officer was 2017. So he has presided over this thing. He was hired in his mid-30s. Now he's in his 40s. Life moves fast. So by my calculation, Derek Falvey has presided over 8 full seasons of Twins baseball, or eight deadlines, and they've been playoff or even bigger contenders in 6 of those 8 years. So they were in either prime position to make a run, or they were in prime position to make the playoffs with maybe like an extra nudge in 2017, 19, 20, 22, 23, and this year 2024. So 6 times under Derek Falvey in strong playoff position at the trade deadline. Only once have the Twins been aggressive at the trade deadline in those 6 years in contention. Only once. Now, is that partially ownership driven? They don't like taking on some of the bigger contracts mid-season that would push you over the top. Is it Falvey having a philosophy of not wanting to pay the same price that other teams pay and prospects to get those needle-moving players? 2017 was the first year they popped up. They went from 100 losses to, they're in contention. and they wound up playing a wild card game. They sold at the trade deadline. And I'm not even saying it was they bought Jaime Garcia.
They bought and
he
sold.
started once and then they lost some games. And you could kind of go either way. I didn't hate the decision, but that was their first chance. It was kind of 50-50 and they sold. 2019, they had the best home run hitting team in the history of baseball. A loaded offense up and down. And they did not make a major trade at the deadline. They traded for injured Sam Dyson, and Sergio Romo was their seventh inning guy. But those aren't win a World Series level needle moving trades, right? 2020, no trades. And you'd say, well, it was the pandemic. It was the pandemic, but there was 7 or 8 or more pretty meaningful trades, big names exchanging teams at that deadline at the end of August in 2020. 2022, that's the year they got aggressive. Okay, Tyler Mahle, let's get a starter in here. Jorge Lopez, get a back-end reliever, and Michael Fulmer. And unfortunately, it did not work, and they wound up falling out of playoff position. 2023, no trades. 2024, no high-level impact trades. So this is a trend going back 8 years. Whenever they're in contention at the deadline, whether it's ownership or it's Falvey or a combination, they don't like to be aggressive on July 31st.
Are they now gun shy as well? Because, 19 and 22 were colossal busts. Like you have literally traded for guys who, I don't know how, but were injured enough that it feels like you should have known something and you didn't. So are they now, do they think we've done a pretty good job at building up a prospect pool, which they've done now? And the nice thing would be to turn around and then use that as capital for a day like yesterday. But are they afraid to because it's gone south? It's
either gun shy or it's just philosophical at this point.
Sure.
I don't think it's out of bounds to say that philosophically the Twins organization, whether it's part ownership or whether it's Derek Falvey, they feel uncomfortable being aggressive at the trade deadline when they have contending teams that can do damage. They would prefer to let it ride, or they would prefer to hang on to prospects that could come up in future seasons and help them maybe win 3 or 4 years down the road. This is and you can't necessarily say the same thing about Terry Ryan from 2001 through, because they were 01 aggressive. 03 aggressive. There was a couple other 2010 sort of aggressive, and there was a couple 06 they weren't aggressive enough. But this is philosophical. This is 8 years of evidence and 6 contending years where they've decided only once to be aggressive at the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I would love for them to make a big splash move, and I know I saw fans yesterday saying well, look what happened in 22. And yes, those were bad trades. Spencer Steer's a nice player for the Reds. The reliever that went to Baltimore, is it Cano, for the Birds that was in the Jorge Lopez trade. Yeah. He's turned into a nice reliever for them. But at the end of the day, that trade deadline didn't cripple and send the Twins down a spiral of being a bottom feeder after that deadline. That was just a bad trade deadline. So
they've agreed.
Yeah, they've been fine. In fact, that trade deadline did not prevent the Twins from not winning a playoff game last year. It did not prevent them from being where they are right now. It was just a bad deadline, and it's a credit, too, for them drafting and scouting and developing their minor league players to the point where they could remove some guys from a surplus and replace them up with other guys, and then you're fine. But you have to strike when the iron's hot, and even though I do think the Twins, even next year, have a really good core, it's just nothing is guaranteed. And even though Baltimore is the best team in the American League this year, there is room for another team in the American League to make a run. And you just can't keep waiting and saying, well, next year we'll do it. Or in 2025 or 6, we're going to be primed to do it. Just nothing is guaranteed, and I think that's what infuriates me.
I do think the circumstances can change, too. If we were to do a pie chart of blame on this one, I definitely think the financial restrictions played a role. I don't know previously. For as much as we've said cheap pull ads, they have done things in previous years where they have spent, okay? Where they have. So previous to this at times, I think it's been the easy out of, ownership is cheap. In this case, I definitely think that can be discussed.
Yeah,
so
this
felt
like a time.
I don't think it's always the same thing. I think in this case, but yes, is Falvey gun shy or too passive or too in love with prospects? That is a conversation for sure. It's part of the pie.
Yeah, what's kind of crazy is they actually, like, as an organization and ownership, built up a lot of goodwill. I would even say going back to the Josh Donaldson contract, which kind of blew up. He didn't pan out the way that you hoped, but that was like a $90 million contract for a guy who was approaching his mid-30s, and then to do the Carlos Correa short-term deal, followed by the Carlos Correa long-term deal, and then they win the playoff game or the playoff game and playoff series last year. They had built up a lot of goodwill going into the 2024 season. And even with the offseason slashing of $27 to $30 million, I think making a more significant move yesterday or in the week leading up would have done so much to put the organization back in the good graces of fans. It would have just been, I almost think, like the message to the clubhouse and the message to the fans and the butts in the seats by telling them symbolically, even if that meaning was more than the actual like on-field wins above replacement, it would have been valuable. I really think, like, and maybe at the end of the day, if we could have been on that phone call with the Tigers, maybe the Tigers were literally saying inexplicably, yeah, we're not trading you Jack Flaherty unless you give us Brooks Lee, so you can hang up. Like but by the way, Jack Flaherty wasn't the only player that was traded yesterday. There was a bunch of other guys that were
last 4 days
up for grabs, and
5 days.
Yeah, and they philosophically, either financially or prospect wise, have just said year after year after year, we don't do the trade deadline. It is not our thing to make aggressive moves. One time in the Falvey era.
And when you talk about pouncing on opportunity, like that is to like your point of creating excitement in the clubhouse, the stands, the Royals. The Royals see an opportunity. And they didn't go like hog wild, but they did enough where you probably say, hey, you know what? They might have improved their team at a key time. And so I think the frustration here is this just seems like a very, we're going to, and then as there's these reports swirling that the Twins are trying to make it clear that they were trying to make trades and the prospects, so they just wouldn't give up those prospects. Falvey then turns around and says, we're going to ride with this group. So what's the real message? Like, were you trying to make trades, or do you really want to ride with this group? Like you can't have it both ways. Well, I didn't get what I wanted, and so, hey, guys, I'm back. Hope everything's great. Yeah, like, it's just a very convoluted, screwed up time, which is a damn shame because this is still a good baseball team. We're just all disappointed that they don't appear to have a direction of, like, at the most important time.
Well, no, they do. They do have a direction.
A direction we want.
Their direction is very plainly, we have a thick line that we draw in terms of how aggressive we are willing to be at the trade deadline.
A direction that we want, which is an aggressive, we're going to actually, we're not going to trade a top 4 prospect.
You know what I would love to see, and they must have research on this internally to say that it is more valuable for us as a franchise, as a non-major market franchise that's, like, even in our best years we're going to be 12th or 14th in payroll, not first, second, or third, that it's in our best interest to make sure we have young players more than we would ever need 3 years, 5 years down the road. But like Declan brought it up earlier, if you do a good job drafting and developing, and they've done some good work, there's been some whiffs in the first and second round, but like, they've got a top half of the league prospect pipeline right now. If you're good at that process, those players are more valuable as trade chips to put good teams over the top than they ever are coming through your pipeline. Like, the idea of Max Kepler 9 years ago was a hell of a lot better than the reality of Max Kepler as a player these last handful of years.
Yes.
And you could say the same thing about a lot of guys. Aaron Hicks, the idea of Aaron Hicks was better than the player ever was.
And you've been gifted Carlos Correa twice now. The first time he's like, I can't find a place to sign, and his agent literally places him here, okay? Then he signs with the Giants. Bang, done. The Mets, bang, done. Comes back here, but Carlos Correa's clock is ticking. Like, you've been gifted a shortstop who is special, and I know he's hurt right now, but this guy is special, and at the plate he's been great. Like the Twins have not had the Twins don't often get dropped into their lap a Carlos Correa, and I would consider him to be dropped into their lap. And so the clock is ticking. He wants to win, and you're still like, nah, timing's not right. Give me a break.
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't know, man. I think what happened from 2011 through 2016 was also, and that's a different front office, but it's the same ownership family. Was that such a shell shock where the cupboards were kind of bare from a prospect standpoint because they just didn't have a lot of guys coming through, and they think, man, if we go too aggressive trading away young pieces and it doesn't work, and then Correa's ankle blows up or he ages out, are they like dealing from a place of fear?
Maybe.
Of, well, we just want to make sure we have enough talent so that if Correa's ankle blows up, if Royce Lewis never figures out how to be healthy, we at least have a competitive baseball team going forward. But I don't know, man. It's it's plain as day. I just gave you the last 8 years. This is them. They are not aggressive, and we'll see. Maybe this is a good team. And I guess my next question for you guys is, as we sort of swallow what happened yesterday and look forward, now they've lost 2 games to the Mets, and that puts a bad taste in people's mouths. But what can this team do the next 2+ months? What do you think is the upside for this team? Now that we're riding with the guys in that clubhouse, what is the peak for this team come October?
Unless they really take all 4 of those games against Cleveland over a 3-day stretch and next weekend here, I really, and I know everyone keeps saying we're waiting for the Cleveland collapse, I have next to no faith the Twins are going to catch Cleveland.
6.5 today, right?
I'm not being Buzz Killington, but we've been waiting for 3 months for that team to just completely fall off, and they're not. And the Twins have been playing good baseball, but not great enough stretches where they can catch them. And now it just becomes a math game, dude. And I don't see a situation pending them sweeping Cleveland and making that gap like 1 or 2 games. Okay, becomes a lot easier. But you can only control your destiny against that team so many more times, and they'll get them for 4 more games also in September. So unless the Twins legitimately take 7 of those 8 games, I don't see a path where the Twins catch Cleveland. I think this team's path is a wildcard team and hopefully can upset a team on the road in the wildcard. I don't think they're going to catch Cleveland. I really don't. So that's kind of where I'm looking at them. I think they're a playoff team. They should be in the dance, but in terms of them catching Cleveland, I don't think it's going to happen.
I also think that now you do have to, with teams improving as well, including KC potentially here, you do have to be acutely aware of the fact that it might be a struggle, depending on how things go, to make the wild card.
Yeah,
like Boston's
right
2
now
games
you're
back
tied.
with KC, but Boston's 2 games back, and Boston is a far better team than expected. So, like, you're gonna need any of the starters who have scuffled a bit to be really damn good. I mean, fortunately, Pablo has improved, pitching this afternoon against the Mets before we're recording before the game. But if he has to continue that now. Like you basically have to have Joe Ryan, Pablo, Ober, who's been great, keep that up. If you don't, I think the wild card very, very well could become a struggle, especially because we're not quite certain when Carlos Correa comes back, and his absence is a huge, huge deal right now.
Yeah, you brought up the thing that we haven't talked about really at all this season is this idea, because it's always kind of felt like you're chasing Cleveland and you're going to make it a race with Cleveland, and we've been looking upward and ahead in the standings. We've yet to do a lot of conversation about just the rearview mirror. I mean, you're tied with the Royals, and they added pieces. They were more aggressive. And to your point, like the Red Sox, but the Astros and the Mariners are fighting, and they're like 3 games behind you right now.
Good point.
And the Astros just added Kikuchi to their rotation. The Rays, who are just perpetually sellers, are still like a plucky organization. They're only 3 games back of you right now in the wild card. Well, I don't know. The Rangers being 7 back might be too far of a stretch. They're actually closer in their own division than they are to the wild card, but that's still,
Right.
That's a team that they've got some fight to it. So I will say officially, I still think this team, as currently constructed, if they can flesh out these injuries and have Correa and Lewis in it for the next 2 months or maybe like September plus, I still think they can win a playoff series, even if it's a road. I mean, these wildcard series are such crapshoots. I think they can win a playoff series. But if they would have landed Jack Flaherty, or I don't think Snell was ever an option, but like a Jack Flaherty level starter,
right,
would have, to me, put them in the conversation to win the pennant, to get to the World Series.
Agreed.
The other thing you have to worry about too is you're so thin right now with your rotation. What if one of those guys gets an injury, something happens? Joe Ryan has to hit the injured list for a while like he did last year, right? He was out for like 3 or 4 weeks.
Yep.
Bailey Ober, something happens. I mean, it's really thin going into the last 2 months. But that's the path. That's the path they chose.
I think they can surprise in a wild card series. I do. I mean, look, I'm not going to make any prediction against the Yankees until I see it. I've been burned too many times. I am not going down that path. I will take that 1 inning at a damn time until the game is finished. But if they played the Red Sox, yeah, I think they can beat the Red Sox. I do. Even though the Red Sox have exceeded expectations, I think they can steal the series against the Red Sox. The Astros haven't been as good as they once were. Seattle had a very nice deadline. Maybe these offensive pieces work out for them, but the Twins have also hit that pitching staff really well. Ironically enough, that might be the best pitching staff in baseball, and the Twins have shown they can actually hit really good pitchers. They did it against the Phillies too, so I think they can win a playoff series, yes. Do I think they're going to catch Cleveland from a math side? I don't think they will.
They can. The problem is we're now trying to have these hypothetical lack of confidence discussions because, like, if they had added a starter, then you're like, okay, this slots in well. Perhaps if Pablo continues to struggle again at times, he's then not your supposed ace. Like, it would have just, I think, emboldened the fan base, the team itself, to feel more confident. And now it feels like we're looking at, hey, a lot of teams improved. As you just said, Phil, that wild card logjam, I mean, it's nuts. It's fun. I actually like it a lot, but it's nuts. So, yeah, it's disappointing that we have to have a conversation like this today instead of, hey, they added a key part, and yes, it cost them a prospect. And the only thing I would have asked is, did the guy that you add, is he healthy? Did we get a physical?
Even get to that point.
Did a doctor look at him? Did somebody have his faxed reports in? But it's a shame because this is a good team. They're going to be back on Comcast on Friday. It should be exciting, and now it's like, oh, okay. And I am curious. It's the weekend, so it probably will do okay. But I am curious to see what the attendance is like for the White Sox, because I have a feeling you're not going to get White Sox fans. And sort of what's the temperature? Because, I mean, the Brewers and Phillies series were great fun. Now, you also, in the Brewers case, had a ton of fans. The Phillies case, you had a nice contingent of their fans. So, like, what's the temperature at the ballpark as far as it's a weekend, the Twins are still, in contention, or is there you didn't do a damn thing, so why should we as the fans?
Yeah. Well, if you do want to swing by out of curiosity, maybe you just want to enjoy some nice summer weather, twins.com/tickets, twins.com/tickets, 612 Saturdays, $6 beers, $1 snacks, $2 food. It's also Kids Day and Sunday Fun Day on Sundays at the ballpark. You could run the bases. Maybe one of you will wind up in the rotation by the end of the season.
Or your kid will, and you'll be rich.
And then we'll demand that your kid is traded for a player that can help you win now. Twins.com/tickets. Still one of the most, even if you're upset about yesterday, still one of the coolest places to hang out and watch a sporting event. So check it out. All right. I think we fleshed all that out for now.
Good talk.
Trevor Plouffe Tuesday on a Thursday tomorrow. So we'll get his take on all this. He's done a great job on the broadcast, traveling on the road this week. But, Declan pumping out extra innings episodes. He is our resident Twins beat podcaster. And the best thing you can do to help us grow this show is to give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple and Spotify, and click the like and subscribe button on the SKOR North Twins Show YouTube channel. We're your home for Twins therapy during times like these. We'll see you guys tomorrow.